Welcome back to the Orange Wheel podcast, the podcast where we support business leaders in understanding Bitcoin and the monetary transition. I'm joined today by Erika Mattsson. Erika is the Chief Communications Officer of the Fragbite Group, a company with a really exciting combination of operations in gaming, as well as a Bitcoin treasury that is growing, and a fascinating combination of those strategies. I've been tracking and following the Fragbite Group's recent announcements over the last year or so, and I'm excited to have this conversation with Erika today. Erika, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and thank you so much for having me.
For those listening who might not be familiar with the Fragbite Group, it'd be great if you could provide a brief overview of what the company's current status is, what its operations are, and a brief history.
Well, Fragbite Group was formed in 2020 out of a number of different companies in esports and gaming. The name comes from Fragbite, which is one of the oldest brands in esports in the Nordics. So that part of us is over 20 years old. We were listed on Nasdaq First North in 21 and have, during that period until recently, been involved in gaming, esports, and Web3 gaming. We divested our Web3 gaming section in May last year, and in June we opened our Bitcoin Treasury. So currently we're focusing on gaming and esports, where we have business operations, and that's where our core capabilities are. And then we're combining that with Bitcoin Treasury, which is really exciting.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's a really unique combination, and one that I think provides some interesting synergies, at least from an outside observer's perspective. And I think also, given that you're based in Sweden, it's great to see another Nordic-based company pursuing a Bitcoin treasury company and strategy. So if you could maybe give a little bit of a view of like how the company evolved from its esports roots to its kind of current listed structure.
Well, it's the esports roots. That's actually it's an exciting but a long story. As I mentioned, Fragbite was one of the very first brands in esports in Sweden and the Nordics. So it started out as a forum, really, for people who were interested in esports. So that's what it was for quite some time, but then it became a viable business over the years. And the other part of the founding part of Fragbite Group was Funrock, which is game development studio. The group as it is now was formed in 2020 when the founders saw potential synergy between having game development and also esports, where we do various kinds of tournaments and content creation and so forth. So that's where we started finding synergies between gaming and esports, and predominantly then game development. Then we added on more subsidiaries as we went along. Last year we did quite a bit of divestment, so we've certainly gone through quite a few changes in a short period of time. But I would say that our core capabilities, which are really based in creating exciting digital entertainment, they're still there very much. But obviously we've been touching upon we've been near the blockchain-based, the crypto-based market for quite some time, seeing as we were previously in Web3 gaming. So for us, it was a pretty natural, but also, as I said, exciting step to move into Bitcoin Treasury and have that as a balance to our operations, giving us opportunity to be both long-term and short-term all at the same time.
Very cool. Yeah, it's great to see these kind of somewhat natural adjacencies where companies are already in things like gaming, where there's a Web3 interface and exposure to blockchain, crypto more generally. And I think those types of companies tend to get more exposure and understanding of Bitcoin as a treasury asset as well, and are kind of front runners in this space in many regards. So it's great to see another, I think, successful example of that. So to turn it to your kind of personal story as well, Erika, how did you kind of come into the Fragbite group, and how has your role? It must be a kind of interesting new challenge to communicate such a novel strategy to the investment community. So maybe some flavor on that aspect as well.
It certainly is a challenge, but that is also what makes it fun. My background is predominantly in management consulting, business development, a lot of brand strategy. Did that for several years, mostly in B2B. A short stint in sports governance. And then I started working with communications, investor relations, marketing, and so forth for a small listed company, also on Nasdaq First North. And that's when I came in contact with Fragbite Group, contacted me, and we met. And I guess we had similar values and curiosity. And I saw a small company that wanted to grow and had a lot of ambition. So I joined, and that was a great decision. It was in the fall of 22. So it's just over 3 years now.
Awesome. It'd be great to understand a little bit about that initial decision of Fragbite Group to kind of begin a Bitcoin treasury strategy. What originally prompted the management team to make such a decision?
Well, as I said, 2025 was a very transitional year for us. 24 was a difficult year for us and pretty much all other SMEs on Nasdaq. It's been a couple of difficult years in terms of macroeconomics, for sure. So we went into 2025, and after a while, it was clear that we needed to divest our Web3 gaming business, which was very unfortunate, but it had to be done at that point for various reasons, which we've communicated. So we knew that we needed to find something else. We knew that we were also looking to divest more and do something meaningful with that capital. And as I mentioned, it's been a couple of difficult years for pretty much all companies of our size. And one of the things that it's just become so incredibly important in that situation that we're in is stability and long-term stability, which most small companies have not really been able to provide. So that was our key focus. How can we keep growing the parts that we have that we know are good and work for us? And how can we add something more on top of this that will give us stability but also opportunities to be bold and do new things? And as mentioned, I mean, we did have quite a bit of experience in the crypto world, although we knew we didn't want to stay where we were, because it was, although very exciting, and I really believe in the business of Web3 gaming, but in the future of it, but it's hard to be at the forefront. So it was clear that the timing was not right for us. So we wanted to do something in that area. Luckily, we had a former employee who really knew his stuff when it came to this. He had 10 years in Bitcoin, and also other factors that played in. So we added Bitcoin Treasury to the mix that we already had. By doing that, we felt that we could sort of complement all the different parts. We have the long-term stability. We truly believe in the Bitcoin as a value driver over the long haul, but also using it as a tool, as a leverage for finding various kinds of yield, which we've started doing, but will continue to do. So it was a combination of things. And we also knew that our shareholders had some interest in this area, given that they had chosen us from before, so that they wouldn't feel comfortable with this, I wouldn't say pivot, but adding another piece of the puzzle. So a number of different reasons led us to this.
Really fascinating to hear that it's not kind of only one aspect, but actually this kind of multifaceted perspective, and a little bit of a timing thing too, I guess, having, getting this liquidity from the asset sales. And then it's a question of kind of what do we best do with this? And I think it's like, surprising for some people who are not yet initiated into Bitcoin Treasury to see Bitcoin as something that's stable, that brings stability. Many people might still see it as super volatile and something that brings more risk to a portfolio. But I think that's a cool thing about smaller businesses, is they're already in relatively volatile businesses already. So from a relative basis, it in any case will provide, I believe, stability and then that long-term growth potential as well.
For sure. And I think, I mean, you touched upon before, what are the challenges of communicating this? You just put your finger on one of them. I mean, of course, Bitcoin does have its adversaries, for sure. And it moves up and down just like anything else, which is one of the reasons that we see it's good to have a combination of operations with Bitcoin, because our commitment to Bitcoin is long-term. It's about preserving value and having a stronger capital structure. But we don't want to go up and down with the Bitcoin price. That is just not feasible. And obviously, we also want to capitalize on our strengths, which is gaming and esports. We see that combination is really important. But as you said, there's a educate the customer type of scenario, as we say in marketing, where certainly the long-term stability of Bitcoin is something that we need to clarify and communicate and show the benefits of.
Certainly. So I understand, I think you quite well described the strategic kind of intent and the rationale in terms of the synergies it can play between your core business and Bitcoin and the core business in a fairly multifaceted manner. When it becomes a bit more practical in terms of actually allocating capital, how do you balance the kind of how much capital to allocate into Bitcoin versus how much to allocate towards investment opportunities, whether they be development or shorter term in nature?
That is the type of question that's always very hard to answer when you're a listed company. I guess one thing that we've communicated is that we're coming out with a new strategic platform. It's taken a bit longer than we expected, simply because we've needed more time to review opportunities and land in how we want to do things. So there's going to be more information coming out that's more granular in terms of what our strategy is, other than the fact that we really want to combine these two parts of our company. And obviously then we'll be also able to answer a bit more like how we allocate. But I mean, on an overall level, when you are a listed company, you wake up in the morning thinking of your shareholders. They're the ones that own our company. So a very general answer is, of course, that we have to look at shareholder value and what brings the most fair shareholder value, both short-term and long-term, and balancing these things as best we can. But then, of course, I mean, we have to take the market into consideration. When is it opportune to buy or not, and so forth. But we'll be able to provide more information on how we plan and what our plans are a bit later in the year.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to kind of seeing that additional information when it comes out, and to kind of learn a bit more about the capital allocation philosophy of Fragbite Group. If we then kind of turn our attention a bit more towards the board of directors, the extent to which you can communicate this, like how do you find the board and the leadership team are thinking about long-term value creation in this context? I mean, is it I mean, I don't know if you can shed a little bit more light about Bitcoin as a value creation driver.
I think one thing to really understand about Fragbite Group is that this is a board that is heavily invested in the company. So the shareholder perspective, both short and long term, is very, very strong. Meaning there's a very strong will to do this as best as we possibly can. The board they introduced this because they genuinely believed that it would be the best thing for us and our shareholders in the long term. So I would say we're very aligned. But then, of course, as I said, we're still working on certain parts of our strategy. We're breaking new ground. I don't know if there are many other gaming/esports companies that have a Bitcoin treasury. Probably not that many, perhaps not even one that's also listed. So this is a new path. We're confident that we're on the right path, but of course we're also finding our feet. And I could give a good example. Today we actually got the stamp of approval from our auditor that they will approve the 2025 books, because one of the things that they asked for was strategy and routine in terms of how we handle everything concerning Bitcoin. Decision on how you bring up the decision, how you calculate what to buy, who does it, at what point, where does it happen, every single thing. And there is no one to help us. You're not going to be able to find someone who's done a manual like that as a listed company. So you basically have to start from scratch and do it yourself, which is what we've done. And that some of that work, obviously, it's not visible. We're not going to be posting on LinkedIn about it, but we're doing a lot of those strategic, structural efforts to make sure that this is going to be viable and stable and part of our business for a long time.
Congratulations. I'm sure that was no small feat.
We're very happy.
Auditors can be quite thorough at times, I think is the word. So,
it can be.
Yeah. And especially when you're kind of, as you said, charting new territory and doing things for the first time, there's a big investment of time and effort that goes into that. So kudos. I think that helps to kind of provide a little bit more context in terms of that. And I think having a very aligned board that has a large investment in the business certainly ensures that there is that kind of like, lower chance of risk between the management team and the minority investors. So great to see that. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about this kind of like combination, because I think, more broadly in the Bitcoin Treasury space, you kind of have lots of different flavors of ways to do it. I'm personally of the mindset that like there's no one size fits all strategy. It's kind of different for every business. But if you had to kind of classify it, I think there's kind of two broad families of thought. There's the companies that are the pure plays, where they effectively don't have a meaningful operating business and focus exclusively on accumulating Bitcoin and focusing on issuing financial products around that. And then you have companies that do have meaningful operating businesses and then combine that with the Bitcoin Treasury, which is, I guess, what I would say Fragbite Group lands into. So in terms of this kind of view, I think you've alluded to it a bit about the synergies between your operating business and your and Bitcoin Treasury. But was there a discussion at all about like whether or not to go kind of pure play versus maintaining the operating business, and what advantages do you sort of see as having this kind of hybrid model more generally?
Of course, when you're in a very transitional period that we've been in, and we've been very clear for a long time in our communications as well that we have assessed everything. We assessed every single asset, whether we keep it or sell it. We've assessed people, we've assessed processes, IPs, everything. So of course, even that was also on the table. Becoming a pure Bitcoin treasury company, I think back to what you said, there are two ways: pure Bitcoin or some kind of treasury and some kind of combo. I think these are really two completely different kinds of companies, and I think that's going to be more as time passes by. What I'm hoping is that what we're doing at Fragbite Group, which I really believe is breaking new ground, is going to be pretty mainstream not too long from now. That it's going to be natural to have a certain part of your business looking at Bitcoin and placing money in Bitcoin, perhaps more or less actively. Obviously, we are interested in doing it actively and using various kinds of financial methods when it's good for us. But I'm hoping and thinking that this is going to become more mainstream. You'll have a portion of your treasury activities devoted to this. And for us, it made sense to add it on. But as I said, we're also, I've lived in the listed environment for 7 years. I sometimes jokingly say that it's communication, but on crack, because everything is to the extreme every day, because you can't make mistakes, and you need to be very, very respectful of the fact that you are not dealing with your own money. You're dealing with thousands of shareholders' money, and you have to adhere to the rules of the market because they are there to safeguard everyone. So in that space, I think it's healthy to understand that you can't just be long-term. Long-term is good overall in business. That's what we're all looking for. And that's the reason we've also added this, because we needed that. But you also have to be able to get short-term wins, because if you don't do that, we live in a quarterly report world. If you don't deliver short-term wins and you don't deliver results, and there's like incremental steps, constantly kind of wins that you can communicate, then the shareholders, they don't know who you are. Unless you're a really big company, you've been around for a long time, and they buy the share and they just put it in in their back pocket and don't think about it. You need to be able to always have something to show regularly. And I think, and maybe I'll be wrong, we'll have another conversation in 3 years, but I think the listed Bitcoin treasury companies, they're going to have periods that are really rough because they're not going to have anything to show. When Bitcoin price is low, or perhaps just stands still and it's hard to kind of make moves. So I would say there are many, many reasons why it's good to have the combination that we now have, because we are in the environment that we are.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, I think, around this idea of ensuring that there is kind of like attention of the management team or the company more generally, the people in the company is a commodity. I guess you're exactly right. There's only so much you can do when sentiment is low with the pure play. And so being able to kind of maximize utilization of that attention and effort and people's time to have another outlet for that, it's kind of a nice natural hedge of time and of effort and attention.
Yeah. And I mean, if you invest in small companies, it's usually because you really believe that they might take off in an exciting way. And then sitting down and waiting for 5 years it's not that attractive. So you have to make sure that you're constantly moving forward. Now, most companies always do move forward, but you also have to be able to show that. So I think for me personally, the thought of working for a pure Bitcoin treasury company, I think I would find that less interesting and less challenging, because it is a completely different ballgame.
Totally. Have there been any, so we've talked a little bit about the synergies, but sometimes there's also frictions when it comes to kind of having a double-barreled approach, so to speak. Have there been any unexpected tensions between the Bitcoin treasury and the core operations of the business that you're able to share?
Well, I mean, shareholders do contact me, which I love. I encourage them to. So, I mean, and which I think is completely natural. We've had quite a few questions that says, I'm not negative, but I don't quite understand. They've been with us for years, perhaps even before we were listed, and they're interested in gaming and esports and in general technology, and they're not quite understanding what this is. And that is also one of the reasons we've spent a bit of extra time on the strategy and rolling it out. And we've been a little quiet in communications because we're really aiming to do it right. So I think for sure there's friction there and potentially people who've left us because they don't quite see. But then, of course, we've also gained new shareholders who contact us and they love this. So, I mean, that's my job now, to cater to both these target groups in equal measure. When it comes to synergies, we've already seen for sure that there are synergies, and I think initially it's about the knowledge that we can share. I mean, and we're a small company, but if we look at, for instance, our partnership with Cefello, which is a fantastic company that I've followed for a long time, I'm very proud that we have an established exchange like that in a small country like Sweden. I think it's exceptional. So we work with them both in our Bitcoin treasury and in our esports section, which aligned really well. And that was super exciting. So we're hoping to see more of that, of course.
Yeah, really cool. And I guess kind of building this ecosystem around it, where you bring in partners who are already in the space and create these kind of interesting ecosystems around it. It's exciting to see where that goes over time.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier a little bit about exploring Bitcoin yield opportunities. So maybe like, how do you think about selecting the appropriate ones? I think we all are aware that, there's always risk associated with any sort of.
For sure. That is one thing that's kept us busy. I mean, we have communicated that we're looking at finding yield, really leveraging Bitcoin, and it can be our own Bitcoin or others' Bitcoin, as we just recently made an investment in MicroStrategy or Strategy. So yes, like you said, risk is the big factor. And no company wants to have too much risk. When you're listed, you want even less risk, of course, and you have to jump through a lot more hoops. So we have looked at a number of different things that we've chosen not to engage in. We've chosen one path now that we just did with the investment and strategy, and we're probably going to be doing other things as well. But we're letting that. We're reviewing our options carefully. Again, we're long term in Bitcoin, so this is something that we were working on. And if I can do a guess, I think getting yield off of Bitcoin is on everyone's mind. Everyone who sits with Bitcoin. I mean, this is a true market gap where there's not enough viable options for a serious company. So I'm hoping that the market economy is going to solve this for us, and that there will be more options moving forward.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's a unique action that I've seen you guys take to go and get MSTR and then kind of sell derivatives based on that. I think it's there's certainly been kind of some investment funds and listed vehicles doing those types of strategies, but I think it's pretty unique now to see a corporation engage in that. I think it's pretty nifty.
We think it's nifty too. And as I said, we are finding ways of leveraging Bitcoin. And this was a good opportunity at that very point in time. Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how much that yields.
Certainly. Yeah, it'd be exciting to see how that pays off as well. I'll be looking at your financials and looking at the results over time. You mentioned, a few times now, Erika, like the challenges of being a listed company, being under extra scrutiny in general, kind of being under the microscope, both from investors and from regulators and so forth. But what has been, I guess, if you had to kind of name one thing, what's been the hardest part about executing this new strategy within the context of being a publicly listed business?
Well, I would certainly say that the fact that, very few had done it. So there's little precedent that you can look at in terms of what is right and what is wrong, and how are you going to assess which parts are inside information and which parts are not, and so forth. We sold our biggest subsidiary in October, mid-October, or 8th of October, I think. And this was a transaction that we had expected to be finalized quite a bit earlier. So we had plans that we couldn't really execute because it was inside information and we were in a log. So it was a pretty long time there that we weren't really able to move forward with everything that we wanted to. That was certainly a challenge. And then, of course, as I said, there's very little precedent. And then you look at, what are other companies doing? Well, there are hardly any others to compare to that have kind of the same situation. And even if you do, perhaps they don't know either. So certainly it's like I said, a lot of breaking new ground, having to spend, I always spend time assessing everything that we do in terms of if it's inside information or not, or assessing the market and so forth. But in this case, I would say everything took a little bit longer and everything was quite a bit more difficult because, as mentioned, it's easy to whine and say, oh, it's so hard to be listed. Yes, it is. And it's expensive. And it's not for everyone. But I think it's so important to also remember, why are there rules in place? Well, it's to make, it's to make trading fair. That is why it's there. So we want to just comply with every rule simply because we want to make it fair. So it's not just a regulatory matter. It's a moral matter as well. And then whenever you break new ground, it's very time consuming. But I think there's also a positive side to it, in the sense that living in this environment, you become very good at distinguishing what's important, what isn't important. You become good at handling details, a lot of details. You become good at managing time-sensitive things. So, it harden you in a positive way, I guess. So, and then, of course, you have the opportunity of being listed and being able to raise capital through that. So there are pros and cons, like everything.
Yeah, and I guess to emphasize what you said about just being the first one to do it in this jurisdiction effectively, it's really, I guess, extra effort above and beyond normal circumstances as well. So I suppose for those that kind of follow in your footsteps over time, it'll be a little bit easier for them working with their auditors and their regulators and so forth. And then I guess to kind of look at the communications part more specifically, what's been the most important thing to get right from how the strategy is being communicated outwardly?
We've really wanted to clarify our intent as much as possible, and also at least start the journey of educate the customer in terms of what is this and why is it good. We've also wanted to be transparent with the fact that we are working hard on our strategy, and some things are finished and others are still in transit, because when you've had a couple of, like I said, the market has been difficult in gaming and in general for small mid-sized companies, it's really important to be transparent. So we've tried to be as transparent as we can with, this is what we're doing, this is why what we're aiming to do, and this is what we haven't finalized yet, but it's coming, and so forth. So transparency is really important to build trust, and we've made a pivot to a degree. So it's going to take a little time for new investors to find us and old investors to perhaps feel comfortable and rely on us. But that's the name of the game, and it's my job every day to make sure that we do that as best we can.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, and I think as this becomes a more normal strategy, which I also tend to believe we will,
Mm,
the exact pace at which that happens is a question mark, um, but I suppose that'll become easier and easier communication with time as it's more and more commonplace. But certainly right now,
for
it's,
sure.
it's kind of fringe in many ways. So I can imagine there's a challenge there. We talked about the synergies and more kind of holistically about being in this hybrid model, operating business and Bitcoin treasury strategy, being able to kind of hedge time and attention depending on where the market's at, being able to get long-term and shorter-term wins and so forth, having this just general optionality and flexibility. But if we kind of focus specifically on kind of Web3 and gaming and esports, um, how do they connect in ways that are special to that particular combination? Um, is there other aspects of kind of how Bitcoin and gaming can work potentially like operationally or bringing Bitcoin into the esports environment? And anything you can comment on that kind of specific hybrid combination?
Well, I mean, I think obviously the natural combination is the Web3 component in gaming that we've chosen to not engage in currently. We've already looked into the synergies between our esports capabilities and Bitcoin, and that's where we're going to be digging a bit more there. Because we have an extremely capable team in terms of putting together productions, events, and various kinds of content. So without, saying too much, we see a path there for sure. In the short, medium term, what we're obviously hoping to do is to have a financial synergy where surplus from gaming, our game development can be put into buying more Bitcoin, where Bitcoin yield can be put into, if we want to make investments, we want to grow our gaming section, then we can do that. So the financial, I would say, part of it is that's where we are currently, and that's where most of the focus will be. In a sense, it's new, but in the other sense, it's a classic market mix. Hopefully, we'll be able to ride out storms. One part can prop up the other, and so forth over the course of when the economy moves. So that's our ambition.
Very cool. So Erika, as we kind of close out here, last kind of section, it'd be great to get, again, to the extent that you can communicate forward-looking statements. It'd be great to understand what are the key milestones, if any, or what does success look like for Fragbite Group over the next 1 to 2 years?
Um, well, I mean, I think this year is going to be a year of building. Last year was divestments and pivots and securing core capabilities and then adding this new exciting part. So this year it's very much about building on this new foundation that we've created. That's part new and part old. I hope that we're going to close 2026 with good numbers, because when you're listed numbers, it's all about numbers, but also with new, viable, exciting revenue streams and so forth. I hope we're going to close 26 with happy shareholders for sure. And then in 27 that we can really expand on the new platform that we are creating right now.
Awesome. So what would be kind of one message to communicate to, the capital markets? So investors that maybe don't yet have exposure to Fragbite Group, are just maybe hearing about it for the first time, but are interested in learning more. I mean, what's the most important thing that they should understand at this stage that might excite them about beginning to follow and potentially invest?
I think we have two target groups in the sense of what kind of investors that already do or will find us interesting. And one is interested in gaming, esports, and in general in entertainment, perhaps a bit of tech. And for that group, I think what we need to show is stability and controlled growth, not taking too many risks, rather growing much as we can within what we have, adding components when it's reasonable to do so. When it comes to the new, I guess, target group that we have, those who are interested in getting leverage from Bitcoin. I mean, there are many ways they can do that. They can buy their own Bitcoin, they can buy an NFT or strategy, but they can also buy Fragbite Group shares. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to show that this combination that we have is strong, both in the short and the long term, and that it's a good investment in that sense. So, I mean, that's the work that we have ahead of us.
Awesome. So, Erika, thanks so much for the conversation. It's been really, really great to connect and go deeper into Fragbite Group's kind of strategy, and I think it's quite a unique one. I think it's an interesting combination of operating business and a Bitcoin strategy. If folks want to learn more about Fragbite Group or potentially get in touch with you directly, what's the best way for them to go about learning more and communicating with you?
Well, they can visit our website. It's under construction, so there's going to be more coming in the next couple of months. So that's fragbitegroup.com. They can always email me at ir@fragbitegroup.com. We're happy to hear from shareholders and happy to hear from others who are interested, and we answer as fast and extensively as we can. Thank you so much too. And actually, I love Orange Wheel content. So for any listeners, hit that follow button. You'll get some exciting content along the way.
Fantastic advice. Okay. Take care, Erika. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.